Shalom Israel, grace and blessings from God the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ be unto you. Y'all forgive me for my tardiness. I'm trying to get things set up and whether it was the internet or Google or whoever it was trying to prevent me from getting all these links and sources. It's not even like links, it's like physical books that I have that I'm trying to bring y'all the information from. And Google was just being irritating with me. I'll just put it like that. So, like I said, I'm still trying to get those things. I had to go a different route, and obviously still getting set up and all that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna check and make sure. I should have them now, and that might make it easier to see these things. So let me check and make sure everything's good on this front. And I'm going to check YouTube and make sure that we are live. We should be, but I'm going to check and make sure that we are. Let's see. Y'all bear with me one second. Are we live? All praises to the Most High. We appear to be live. Are we live? All right. So, I should have these that I just uploaded here to my drive, but I don't. What drive did it go to? Y'all forgive me. Let me check and make sure we're good on Facebook. We should be, but let me just check. Yeah, we should be good on Facebook as well. But y'all please bear with me while I'm trying to get these things uploaded so that we can see them here in the class. I just uploaded some things. Where did I upload them to? Let me see. Like most recent? Like what are we recent? Yeah, so it sent them to the wrong drive, but that's okay. That's okay. I can always just switch over to that one. Y'all, give me 1 second. All right, so these are going to be a bit harder to comb through in this way, but it's all good. It's all good. Let's just go ahead and get into the scriptures. I appreciate y'all being patient with me. Let me go ahead and bring this down, and we'll go ahead and get started. All right. Let me move a little that way. All right. So, as we do every week, learning the word, let's go to 2 Timothy, chapter 2 and verse 15. This is what it's all about. Next chapter, 2 Timothy chapter 2 and verse 15. It says, study to show thyself approved unto God. So that's why we should study, not to prove ourselves to men, but to show yourself approved to God. A workman that needeth not to be ashamed, and you won't be ashamed when you do such things, rightly dividing the word of truth. So that's the intentions, that's the goal, that's the purpose, is to rightly divide the word of truth. All right. So from there, I want to start with Ezekiel 37. I don't want to read all of Ezekiel 37, but just so that we can understand why I split this up as far as the 12 tribes breakdown. I split it up into last week. I went into Judah, and honestly, Joseph is going to be two parts, especially with the late start that I got tonight. Joseph is definitely going to be split up into two parts. But in Ezekiel 37, let's go ahead and go there. I talked about it last week as far as the kingdom split. Ezekiel 37 is about the restoration of the Israelites and God's kingdom. That's what Ezekiel 37 is about, all right? So, starts with the Valley of Dry Bones, and then it talks about the tribes coming together again. So, Ezekiel 37, starting with 15. The word of the Lord came again unto me, saying, Moreover, thou son of man, take thee one stick and write upon it for Judah and for the children of Israel, his companions, right? So last week we talked about Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. Then take another stick and write upon it for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and for all the house of Israel, his companions. All right. So now we're getting into Joseph being the representative of the northern kingdom. All right. Joseph is just representative of the rest of the tribes that we didn't talk about last week. Speaking of, I need to pull up these 12 tribes charts for y'all. So give me 1 second. I was going to upload, or rather, I was going to open that up in a new tab. But I can go ahead and go home. I guess that's all recent files, but that's not all the recent files. View more. Here we go. I guess that's all that was recently uploaded. Why is it only showing these? Again, y'all forgive me. My drive. Let's just go there. All right. So the 12 tribes of Israel in the west and in the east. Let me go ahead and pull these up so that we can have them here. And yeah, this is going to take much longer than how I was trying to be prepared for it, but things happen. It is what it is. Again, y'all forgive me. So this is the one that most Israelite congregations are used to. They usually just say 12 tribes chart, but really it's incomplete because it only talks about the Israelites in the west. And this one is to fill in the blanks, kind of fill in the gaps as far as the Israelites that are in the east as well. All right, we talked a little bit about that last week. As we go further over the next couple of weeks, we'll get more into that specifically. And really what I wanted to do this week is go into the general overview of the Israelite-Phoenician connection. I had mentioned it a little bit last week, and I really touched on it in Bible History 101 when Solomon had made the agreement with Hiram. And we can go ahead and get that now. In 1 Kings 5, and I already know my internet's going to be goofy as well. I don't know why it's still acting like it's loading. Okay, this is what really needs to load. 1 Kings 5, I believe, is when he first makes the agreement with Hiram. So in 1 Kings 5, when he was preparing for the temple, it says, and Hiram, king of Tyre is, you have Tyre and Zidon, which were the two major cities of the ancient Phoenicians, all right? The ancient Canaanites, specifically the seafaring Canaanites, the Phoenicians, they were based out of Zidon, really, but also Tyre. Hiram, king of Tyre, sent his servants unto Solomon, for he had heard that they had anointed him king in the room of his father. For Hiram was ever a lover of David, right? David had a reputation. His fame went to all the surrounding people round about. They were either scared of him or they were like Hiram and they loved him. And Solomon sent to Hiram, saying, Thou knowest how that my father could not build a house unto the name of the Lord his God for the wars which were about him on every side, until the Lord put them under the soles of his feet. But now the Lord my God hath given me rest on every side, so that there is neither adversary nor evil occurrent. And behold, I purpose to build an house unto the name of the Lord my God, as the Lord spake unto David my father, saying, Thy son whom I will set upon thy throne in thy room, he shall build a house unto my name. Now therefore command you that they hew me cedar trees out of Lebanon. And my servants shall be with thy servants, and unto thee will I give hire for thy servants according to all that thou shalt appoint. For thou knowest that there is not among us any that can skill to hew timber like unto the Zidonians. Right? So Solomon is saying, hey, let's make an agreement. Let's make a pact together. You help me build the temple, and I will also help you as well with some workers. Right? And then we later on, we'll get to how he actually paid Hiram later on down the line. But the cedar trees that are in Lebanon were the best timber in the region. So that's why he's talking to Hiram, because he controlled that region. And it came to pass when Hiram heard the words of Solomon that he rejoiced greatly and said, Blessed be the Lord this day, which hath given unto David a wise son over this great people. And Hiram sent to Solomon, saying, I have considered the things which thou sent to me for, and I will do all thy desire concerning timber of cedar and concerning timber of fir. My servant shall bring them down from Lebanon unto the sea, and I will convey them by sea in floats unto the place that thou shalt appoint me, and will cause them to be discharged there. And thou shalt receive them, and thou shalt accomplish my desire in giving food for my household. You see that right there. So pay us in, as it goes on to say, wheat. So Hiram gave Solomon cedar trees and fir trees according to all his desire. And Solomon gave Hiram 20,000 measures of wheat for food to his household, and 20 measures of pure oil. Thus gave Solomon to Hiram year by year. So I'm just kind of reading a little further to see if we need to read this, and definitely verse 12. And the Lord gave Solomon wisdom as he promised him, and there was peace between Hiram and Solomon, and they two made a league together. So here's where we first see the Israelite-Phoenician connection. All right, this is where they first made a covenant together. They first made a brotherly covenant, as Amos referred to it when they ended up breaking it, when the Canaanites ended up breaking it. And we see later on they actually refer to each other as brothers. And then it goes on to say the specific works. We're not necessarily even talking about the things that they're doing specifically. We're just looking at this connection between the Israelites and Phoenicians. All right, that's going to be important when you study like academic sources, when you look at secular sources, because the people in the secular world, secular historians, secular archaeologists, they pretty much always refuse to acknowledge the validity of the scriptures, right? They'll use secular terms like Phoenician in place of Israelite, when really the Israelites and the Phoenicians were so intertwined, they pretty much became one and the same. Like as far as the Phoenician culture ended up being almost entirely populated by Israelites, and the Hebrew culture of the Israelites really influenced the Phoenician cities. And so here we go. In chapter 9 of 1 Kings, I'm going to jump down to verse 10. And it came to pass at the end of 20 years, when Solomon had built the two houses, the house of the Lord and the king's house, right? So Solomon also built his house with the Phoenician timber. Now Hiram, the king of Tyre, had furnished Solomon with cedar trees and fir trees, and with gold, according to all his desire. That then King Solomon gave Hiram 20 cities in the land of Galilee. And Hiram came out from Tyre to see the cities which Solomon had given him, and they pleased him not. Right, because Solomon kind of gave him the worst cities. And he said, what cities are these which thou hast given me, my brother? Right, so we see that Hiram actually referred to him as a brother. And he called them the land of Kabul unto this day, which means unpleased. And Hiram sent to the king 60 talents of gold. So that would be 120 talents of gold. All right, so again, jumping down, because we're just trying to see the connection here. All right. Just trying to see the correlation between these two groups of people. All right. So jumping down to verse 26, and King Solomon made a navy of ships, and Ezion Geber is how I always pronounce it. It could be Ezion Geber, whichever, which is beside Elath on the shore of the Red Sea in the land of Edom. Right. So let me see if I got that on the map real quick. I know that I do, but still, let me find which map it's on. So in the maps, well, I can show you on the Abraham Journey map. Even though it's probably not going to be listed. Will Elath or Ezion Geber be listed? No, it won't. But it's like right here, at the top of the Red Sea, at one of the, not the most northern point, but one of the most northern points of the Red Sea. The northeasternmost point of the Red Sea is where Ezion Geber is. See if I can get it. This probably shows Elath. Yeah, Elath is right there. So it's right beside Elath. Ezion Geber is right beside Elath. All right. Do I got any other one that'll actually show Ezion Geber? I don't think so. No. Okay. It's all good. So I might be skipping over the ships of Tarshish here, and I don't want to skip them over. They might actually be in the Chronicles. It might show it here in 1 Kings 10. Yeah, here we go. Well, it doesn't say ships of Tarshish are later on down. Excuse me. So in verse 11 here in 1 Kings chapter 10, so we see how they sailed out from the Red Sea, right? That's what this past chapter said. In 1 Kings 9, they had a port at Ezion Geber, where Solomon had made a navy of ships, right? At Ezion Geber, which is beside Elath, right there in the Red Sea, in the land of Edom. And Hiram sent in the navy his servants, shipmen, right? Mariners, all right? Navigators that had knowledge of the sea with these servants of Solomon, right? So the Phoenicians, and we'll read about this in a different source here shortly, how the Phoenicians, since they were around since before the days of Abraham, right? Understand that. The Canaanites were one of the first nations of people established. They were established in Genesis 10, all right? Alongside Egypt, alongside like the children of Joktan weren't too far behind. Over there around the Indus River, Nimrod and Sumeria was pretty much the first, but the Phoenicians and Egyptians were shortly after, all right? They were around a long time before Israel had ever got established, right? So they had knowledge of, maritime trade specifically is what they were into, but just being mariners, right? Understanding, as it said here, the knowledge of the sea, all right, with the servants of Solomon. So the Israelites who served Solomon, they learned from the Phoenicians. They learned from the best as far as navigators, sea-faring navigators, all right? And it says, and they came to Ophir. Ophir is India, all right, and fetched from thence gold, 420 talents, and brought it to King Solomon, all right? So again, jumping over to 1 Kings 10, it says the same thing. And the navy also of Hiram, the Phoenicians, that brought gold from Ophir, brought in from Ophir great plenty of almug trees. So these almug trees are red sandalwood, all right? Sandalwood trees only comes from India and that region, South Asia, all right? And precious stones. And the king made of the almug trees pillars for the house of the Lord. And for the king's house, harps also, and psalteries for singers. There came no such almug trees, nor were seen unto this day, right? So, here we see, during the days of Solomon, there was Israelites that was going out towards India, all right? And it wouldn't be much of a stretch to say beyond India either, all right, since the days of Solomon, all right. So jumping down to where it's talking about Tarshish. Well, I'll read verse 14. It's talking about, now the weight of gold that came to Solomon in 1 year was 666 talents of gold, 666 talents of gold. Beside that, he had of the merchantmen and of the traffic of the spice merchants and of all the kings of Arabia and of the governors of the country, right? So of all the like merchantmen, like the Phoenicians, and the traffic of spice merchants, right? And from Arabia, right? So he had all of these things coming to him, flowing through Jerusalem, all right? Flowing through the land of Israel, all right? So jumping down to verse 22, for the king had at sea a navy of Tarshish with the navy of Haram, right? So it said, yeah, the navy of Haram that was stationed at Ezion-Geber, right, that went out towards the east, the ships of Tarshish, that's more Mediterranean traffic, all right? So Solomon had it set up in either direction. So and having control of, from the Nile to the Euphrates, that was the area that he controlled, because remember, he had married with the Pharaoh's daughter, right? He had married her. So now he's got a connection with Egypt all the way down to the Nile, right? And then up towards the north, David had conquered everything leading into the Euphrates, right? So all that region he had control of, plus he's got ships that go out from the Red Sea all the way to India, and he's got these Mediterranean ships. Solomon controlled everything in the world at that time. The Israelites were going all over the world at that time, all right? That's one of the ways that the Israelites spread out, all right? Even from the days of Solomon, which was the 10th century BC. So very long time ago, right? About a little bit more, or I should say a little bit less than 1,000 years before Christ. All right, 10th century BC is like 900s BC. That's when Solomon was. That's when all these Israelites started spreading out, all right? And you could say before then if you wanted to, just based on, individual migrations. But I mean on a large scale, Israelites moving all over the place at that time, all right, 10th century BC. At sea, a navy of Tarshish with the navy of Haran. Once in 3 years came the navy of Tarshish, bringing gold and silver, ivory and apes and peacocks. So the type of merchandise that they brought in shows you that these, because keep in mind what the Mediterranean actually is. Because you think Mediterranean, I don't necessarily know what other people think when they think Mediterranean, but it seems like when you go to like a Mediterranean restaurant, for example, it's mostly like you're thinking of like Greece or like Turkey. But the Mediterranean is the Middle East, Europe, and Africa. It's all of that. The Mediterranean connects all of that. All right? Just to show on a map here. I'm sure I got a map. Of not all the Mediterranean, I guess. Well, the Roman Empire was all of the Mediterranean. That's why they ruled the world at that time that they did, because they had all the Mediterranean. So yeah, here's the Mediterranean. It gives you entrance into Africa, into Europe, and obviously Israel is in the Middle East, right? So, but look at the merchandise that they're bringing in: gold, silver, ivory, and apes. And peacocks. So specifically ivory and apes only come from Africa. There's no like European elephants, right? That I'm thinking specifically of ivory, all right? So like all of these regions are getting Israelites, because as I said here, they come once every 3 years, right? So that's a voyage. That's not, you go on a trip and you come back. That is you go on a voyage here, you make a stop here, you make a stop there, you stay there for a while, you make a stop over here, then you come back bringing whatever, you had gotten. So that's where we see the origins of the Israelite-Phoenician connection, but it doesn't stop there. Not hardly, all right? From there, though, I think I do want to go back to a book that we was reading. Let's go recent. A book that we were reading from last week called "From Babylon to Timbuktu." All right, just talking about the Phoenicians and kind of getting acquainted with the Phoenicians. Let me see if I got it here, because I'm pretty sure I uploaded it, but you never can tell the way that it's been treating me today with the internet. Let's see. So, in case you were wondering, because I had sent it to myself last week, and we were talking about it. I don't know if I ever showed y'all the cover. I'm just gonna have to put it in here later. But where is it at? Here it is. Here it is, right here. So this is the book right here. From Babylon to Timbuktu by Dr. Windsor. Dr. Rudolph R. Windsor. I opened this up. Why is it not? Come on now. I was trying to show y'all the cover of the book, but come on now. Yeah, From Babylon to Timbuktu by Dr. Windsor. And as I said last week, and just in general, media literacy is important. It's not just like media literacy, I'm using that term because that's more of like a social media type thing. That's more of a modern term. But that also applies to like TV shows that you're watching, movies that you're watching, books that you're reading. Understand the biases that each person has. All right, so you can understand like where they might be right, where they might be wrong, and even and I will say this: when you understand a person's biases, because everybody has biases, no one's completely objective. Some people try to be objective, and I commend them for that, I suppose. But sometimes it's better when somebody just reveals their biases, right? But when you understand someone's biases, it's easier to parse through, okay, what is fact and what is fiction, all right? What is something that they're adding to this? What is something that they're trying to force? And what is something that is just fact, right? And that's going to become more apparent as I did last week, went into, I guess, the Moors and Jews in Spain, that book. That's not a secular book necessarily because the guy who wrote that was Jewish, but it certainly wasn't a Hebrew Israelite source, quote unquote. Whereas Dr. Windsor, he pretty much is in the faith in that regard. But these other sources that I'm pulling from, the majority of them, or at least with a couple of them that we'll also be getting into tonight, they're secular sources. But I can't really tell which page. Okay. So this would be the first page. What is this? Page 106? Yes, page 106, From Babylon to Timbuktu. All right, it says the Canaanites and Phoenicians in Africa. The language, which is called Hebrew Phoenician or Canaanite, was employed in the lands called Phoenicia, Palestine, or Canaan for over 1,000 years before the Aramaeans, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob came to Canaan. Now, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob weren't Aramaeans by blood. All right, they weren't Syrians because that's who Aramaeans are. They were Hebrews, right, from Eber, whereas Aramaeans are Semitic, but they're not Hebrew. All right. Abraham was a Hebrew who just so happened to live in Ur of the Chaldees, and he went up through Mesopotamia and came down to Canaan. That was his journey. We've talked about that before. So they're not Aramaeans, and they were Hebrews. So their language was Hebrew. That's what they spoke. The Israelites lost their Aramaic language and adopted the Hebrew speech of the Canaanites. The thing about the Canaanites is they also spoke Hebrew. All right, except it wasn't. It's a Phoenician script. It's not like the modern Hebrew. And he is true that, or rather, I should say, he is accurate and that Abraham and all his descendants pretty much picked up the Phoenician script for the Hebrew language. Now, whether that was already the script for the Hebrew language in general, or whether he learned that from the Canaanites, I cannot tell. I cannot say. But what I can say is that since probably even before Solomon, as I said, the Hebrew-Phoenician connection really started with Solomon. But probably even before Solomon, they more than likely shared a language. The Phoenicians and the Hebrews shared a script, shared a writing language. That's what I mean by script, and also shared a spoken language. So that's all he's talking about here as far as like the languages being the same. The Hebrew Phoenician merchants from the cities of Zidon and Tyre controlled the trade along the Mediterranean coast for more than 1,000 years before there were any economic treaties made with the Israelites. Yes, and I spoke to that as far as like the Phoenicians were established before Abraham even got there. That's why Canaanites were all throughout the land whenever he got there, because they were all either related to or were exactly Phoenicians. The Hebrew-speaking Phoenicians, and he has in brackets here, Canaanites, established their greatest city, Carthage, at Tunis in North Africa. So let's go back to maps, just so y'all can see where Tunis is. It's in modern-day Tunisia. That's where the name Tunisia comes from, is from Tunis, which is the Arabic name for Carthage. I don't know if this map will be even legible. We can try to look at this Godby map of Africa. Let's see. It's taking forever to pull up these photos. And see, that's not even that's not even an internet thing. That's a my computer being slow thing. There it is. Okay. So do we see Tunis on here? Shoot. Okay, so yeah, Tunis, I don't know if y'all can see this. Tunis is up here. Did it say Tunisia? Yeah, so you see it says Tunisia right here, but it's sideways. So that's where Tunis, Carthage would be around that tip right there. I'll try to find a better map to show it, because that's that Godby map, he kind of wrote all over it. So I don't necessarily want to demonstrate or show that, because I can't really read it myself. I know y'all probably can't read it. I'll show it on a larger map, I suppose, on the Peters projection map. Of course, I could just go back to the Roman Empire map. That shows the Mediterranean. Oh, good Lord. It takes a minute to pull up one photo. There we go. So, modern Tunisia, as you can see here on its side still, in a more modern map. Right, modern Tunisia, and then you got Tunis right up here at the top. I know it's kind of hard to see. It's all blurry and stuff. But it's that's where Carthage was. I could just pull it up. Maybe Mediterranean, the Roman Empire under Trajan at 117 AD. Pull that map up, y'all be able to see it a little better. I don't know if the city's gonna be labeled. It should, but yeah. So you see here this same area that is Tunisia today, and even Tunis in ancient times, the city is in ancient times it was first called Carthage, or to the Romans Carthago, excuse me. So let's get back at it. Talking about Carthage and the establishment of it. Before the Phoenicians established their colony, Carthage, in Africa, many Hebrew-speaking Canaanites had migrated across northern Africa. One Tosefta, let me zoom in a little bit. Quoting an older source, said that when Joshua approached Canaan, he told the inhabitants that 3 courses were open to them. They could either leave the country, or they could sue for peace, or they could declare a war against him. Now, we know according to the scriptures, he told them, or rather the Lord told him not to make peace with any of them. So I don't know if I necessarily trust that source. What could be trusted, though, is that some of the Canaanites fled from Joshua. That sounds something like they would do. The Girgashites, among others, preferred to withdraw into Africa. The Tosefta goes on to say that the Amorites, the Cadmonai, the Kenites, the Kenizzites, some of whom figure among the founders of Carthage, also went to Africa, right? Because as I said, as he said, as I said, as I've been saying, the Phoenicians were already, established maritime traders. They were already established seafaring men, right? Mariners. So they would have already known pretty much all the Mediterranean locations, and probably would have populated some of them as well. Let's see. These traditions date from a period when communication between Africa and Phoenicia was continuous, and I would probably assume the same. The proper names of Girgash and Kenaz are often met with in Carthaginian and Phoenician inscriptions. The Talmud says that the Canaanites in Africa asked Alexander the Great to restore them their country, which had been taken from their ancestors by Joshua the son of Nun, Joshua ben Nun. So is this next one over? Is this going to be what I'm looking for, the continuation? Page 107. Come on now. Nope. Get out of this. Y'all forgive me. Might be this one. Or this might be the last one. No, that's page 108. Here we go. 107. These traditions have been ratified by the fathers of the church. Thus, St. Jerome calls to witness the Talmud to support his statement that the Girgashites established colonies in Africa, and St. Augustine designates the natives of Africa as Canaanites. See, that's the right now who's populating North Africa mostly is the Ishmaelites. They kind of push the Canaanites out, but most of the like West Africans and Central Africans are and South Africans are Canaanites, and the ones that ain't are Israelites. All right, it's the Israelite Phoenicians who went down in there and mixed with Cush a bit, depending on what you're talking about. So it says the prophet Isaiah in Isaiah 19:18 says that 5 cities in Africa will speak the language of Canaan, right? The Egyptian cities. We should not forget that the Israelites have been engaged in commercial enterprises, activities, and migration since Solomon's treaty with the Phoenicians, and that's why I started off with the Solomon-Hiram agreement and covenant, brotherly covenant. The Phoenicians established their metropolis, Carthage, in the 9th century BC, and that's why I made a big distinction with the 10th century BC is when Solomon made his treaty, right? And let's go even further in the Book of the Kings into the 9th century BC, chapter what I'm looking for, 16, I think it is. This would be the middle of the 9th century BC as far as I know, and we can look it up here in a second. But let's see. So you had Omri being wicked and evil, but he was a mighty man in the northern kingdom of Israel. He's the one who established Samaria. All right, when you read about the Samaritans in the New Testament, it's all because Omri had established the capital of the northern kingdom of Israel. He had established the capital of Joseph as Samaria. All right, he established Samaria as the capital of Joseph. All right, Omri, probably a Manassite, could have been Ephraimite, I guess. So it says, now the rest of the acts of Omri, which he did, and his might that he showed, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel? We don't have that book. We have the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah. That's the Chronicles that's in the Bible. So Omri slept with his fathers and was buried in Samaria, and Ahab his son reigned in his stead. In the 38th year of Asa, king of Judah, began Ahab, the son of Omri, to reign over Israel. And Ahab, the son of Omri, reigned over Israel and Samaria 22 years, right? So those 22 years. Let me look up Ahab, king of Israel. Let's see what dates it gives on Google. I don't necessarily trust the dates on Google all the time, but sometimes they'll give you a rough estimate. 918 BC is when he was born and died 853 BC, right? So 22 years before that would put him 875 is when he started his reign, 875 BC to 853. Am I right about that, or am I getting that wrong? Either way, yeah, that should be right, regardless. The middle of the 9th century BC, all right, is when Ahab reigned. And the thing about Ahab, the part that I wanted to get, and it came to pass as if it had been a light thing for him to walk in the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, right, the first king of the northern kingdom, did everything wickedly, did everything wrong, established idols for the people to worship, give Joseph a bad foundation as far as trying to pursue righteousness, all right, that he took, meaning Ahab took to wife Jezebel. If y'all have never read of this biblical character, it's not good. Or y'all maybe have heard at least the term that people call wicked women. Jezebel comes from this person, the daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Zidonians, king of the Phoenicians. All right, and went and served Baal and worshiped him. All right, so that's what Ahab did. He intermarried with the Phoenicians. All right, instead of somebody like Solomon, who he did end up intermarrying with the Phoenicians, but the covenant that he made with Hiram was based on righteousness. It wasn't based off political ties and I'll serve your God if I can marry your daughter and all this kind of stuff like Ahab did. All right, Ahab was wicked and evil. All right. It said, and went and served Baal and worshipped him, and he reared up an altar for Baal in the house of Baal, which he had built in Samaria. So here we see not only a connection between Ahab and the Phoenicians, but also a taking on their culture, all right, and becoming like the Phoenicians, all right. And if you think, and since it says that the king married a Canaanite woman, it was probably in fashion and in vogue for some of the commoners to marry some of the common Canaanite women as well. There was probably all sorts of intermixing going on here between the Israelites and the Phoenicians. It's not wild or crazy to assume that, all right? And Ahab made a grove, and Ahab did more to provoke the Lord God of Israel to anger than all the kings of Israel that were before him, right? He did all sorts of wickedness by becoming like the Phoenicians and intermarrying with the Phoenicians, worshiping their God, taking on their culture, all right? It said in his days, we don't necessarily need to read about how, the wicked man rebuilt Jericho. But going back to what we're reading here in the Google Drive, as far as when Carthage was established, was a time when the Israelites were heavily tied to the Phoenicians, excuse me, in the 9th century BC. Now, it was probably even after Ahab died that Carthage was established. For some reason, I'm thinking around 817 BC. I could be wrong, but I think it was the latter half of the 9th century BC when Carthage was established. Eventually, they conquered the neighboring tribes from Libya to the Atlantic Ocean, disseminating their Hebrew Phoenician language and culture in every direction. So you see here that in the book, Dr. Windsor is describing a combined Hebrew and Phoenician culture, all right? The Hebrew Phoenician language and culture were invigorated and strengthened by the deportation and migration of energetic black Hebrews from Palestine. Ptolemy Soter of Egypt conquered Syria and Phoenicia, deporting more than 100,000 Hebrews. The Persian king Cambyses had previously sanctioned the colonization of Hebrews in Egypt. During the wars of the Maccabees, thousands of Hebrews became slaves and exiles. Ptolemy Lathyrus captured 10,000 slaves from the region of the Sea of Galilee. the king of Egypt, Psamtik I and Psamtik II, used Israelite garrisons on the Egyptian borders near Libya. The wars with Rome compelled hundreds of thousands more to escape into North Africa, right? So obviously, Dr. Windsor is making the case of Israelites, Hebrews in general, in Africa, all right? And we talked about this last week, so I'm kind of getting on through it. During the Punic Wars and after, North Africa contained a large Hebrew population. This Hebrew population made converts and intermarried with the Canaanites and the native Africans. The city and language of Hannibal, right? So going on to the next chapter and the next page. At the ruins of Carthage, archaeologists have found about 4,000 inscriptions in the ancient language of Canaan, right? Which, as we have established, is Hebrew. All right, let me go ahead and get rid of that. Nahum Schlaus says these inscriptions date from, that would be this page 108, date from the time of Nehemiah, of Simon the Just, of Hannibal and Hasdrubal, right? So like the name Hannibal and Hasdrubal, they have the name Baal in them, as you would read like many names in the Bible that have Yah in them or El in them. It's all based on like the God that you serve, or the God that your parents served, I suppose, because they named you. Says Slouch, and most valuable of all, we have found again the ancient language and writing of Canaan. The rich idiomatic speech of a city which once counted 700,000 inhabitants, and we Hebrew writers, we who write and feel in our biblical tongue, have recognized at once that this recalled Phoenician language is nothing more nor less than Hebrew, a pure dialect, nearly the same as was spoken in the country of Israel, right? So the modern Hebrew language is more distant, right? As far as the writing of it is more distant than, it was in ancient times. The vowels used in it is not the same as the ancient. Whereas the Phoenician script and dialect is closer to the pure Hebrew that the ancients spoke, all right? And of course, over time, languages evolve and things like that. So I'm not necessarily going to get into a language discussion, but the point is that the Hebrew-Phoenician connection was well established in Carthage. The population of Carthage was derived from Palestine, and its civilization was Hebraic in origin, right? So we see here from historical sources, because we read in the scripture how the northern kingdom Israelites took on the Phoenician culture, took on the Canaanite culture. But we also see with historical texts that the Phoenicians also took on a Hebrew culture. It was a mixed culture. All right, and that's what we see with Northern Kingdom Israelites, is a mixed culture. All right, especially when you get to those Israelites that's in the east, right? Because they went through all the heathen to get there, but also over here in the west as well, the indigenous over here as well. It's a mixed culture. All right. Let's see. After much research that the language the population of Carthage, I'll read that again, was derived from Palestine, and its civilization was Hebraic in origin. Slouch is certain, after much research, that the language Hannibal spoke and in which he directed his troops was Hebrew. There is evidence that the Carthaginians possessed a high priesthood, and their ceremonies and sacrifices were similar to the rituals found in the book of Leviticus, right? So a kind of priesthood. All right, not necessarily the holy high priesthood, but a similar priesthood. According to some inscriptions, the Hebrew tribes of Asher and Zebulun, okay, two northern kingdom tribes, were in Carthage from the foundation of the city. All right, and this is where a lot of your Afro-Brazilians and your Afro-Latino people come from, that are in Central America, come from the descendants of these Carthaginians, all right? Were in Carthage from the foundation of the city. At the ruins of Carthage were excavated many inscriptions containing many Hebrew names, such as Joab, Joash, and Joel, all right? The city of Tunis is said to be neither Arab nor European. Tunis is a Jewish city. Nowhere else does the Jew feel at home as he does in Tunis. Slouch says so beautifully, and indeed, Tunis, the inheritor of Hebrew Carthage, is the eternal city of the Jews. For like the phoenix, the Jews have risen again and again out of the ashes of their destruction. After the sacking of Carthage, the Jews were found again in Carthage under Roman dominion. After the Byzantine persecutions, they fled into the desert, and even under the persecution of the Arabs, the Jews somehow managed to survive the catastrophe after catastrophe, right? So I turned to that book first just to show you the connection between the Israelites and the Phoenicians, all right? And we showed it in the scriptures. We showed it in, I showed it in the scriptures. I showed it in From Babylon to Timbuktu, right? So now let's get some of these secular sources who won't mention the Israelites as much, won't mention the Hebrews as much, but they do mention the Phoenicians. All right. So this first one is from Feats and Wisdom of the Ancients. This is the cover of the book. It's published by Time Life Books. All right. I imagine it's compiled by different authors because it doesn't give an author's name, but this is from Time Life Books. Hardly a Hebrew Israelite source. This is a secular source. Like I said, you can look up Time Life Books. From that book, there's I believe the chapter is called Navigators, and it talks about all these different stories from different peoples and their navigations, right? So the question, the title up here at the top is Phoenicians in America? Question mark. We are sons of Canaan from Zidon, begins the manuscript. It is written in a Phoenician language used some 500 years before the birth of Christ. All right, so they found this stone, and I guess it's going to say, in only 8 lines it tells a story of a voyage around Africa, of storm, human sacrifice, and salvation on the shores of what is now Brazil, right? And I would even question this translation, because saying they're from Zidon, or like from like the Middle East, right? Saying they're from Israel, because that's where Zidon is. Zidon is like right there in Israel. And when you read the allotment of the tribes, right, that Joshua designated out, Zidon actually belongs to Asher. And they ended up in Brazil. So I'll go ahead and pull that up in the scriptures, because this story of this people that came around Africa and settled in Brazil is actually prophecy. It's not the Canaanites who were going to do it. It was the Israelites. It was the northern kingdom of Israel. In 2nd Ezra 13 and verse 40, it says, those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hosea the king, whom Salmanassar the king of Assyria led away captive, and he carried them over the waters, so came they into another land. So I do want to get what that's referencing in 2nd Ezra, because in 2nd Ezra 13, it's actually a vision Ezra is being shown, and this is the interpretation of the vision that he's receiving. He saw a peaceable multitude, and the angel is describing to him who that peaceable multitude is. He said, those are the 10 tribes, and then the angel, of course, references the history that's written here in 2 Kings 17. All right? So in 2 Kings 17, starting with 1, in the 12th year of Ahaz, king of Judah, began Hoshea, the son of Elah, to reign in Samaria over Israel 9 years. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, but not as the kings of Israel that were before him, right? So he wasn't as bad as like Ahab, for example. Against him came up Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, that's Shalmaneser the fifth, and Hoshea became his servant and gave him presents, right? He became a servant under tribute, right? He had to pay taxes to him. And the king of Assyria found conspiracy in Hoshea, right? Because Hoshea wanted to rebel against the Assyrians. For he had sent messengers to So, king of Egypt. Keep that in mind. He sent messengers to the king of Egypt and brought no present to the king of Assyria, as he had done year by year. Right. So so Shalmaneser knew something was up, because he said, "Wait a minute, Hoshea ain't sent his taxes in yet. Let's go pay him a visit." Therefore, the king of Assyria shut him up and bound him in prison. Then the king of Assyria came up throughout all the land and went up to Samaria and besieged it 3 years. So this is the destruction of Samaria. All right. In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria took Samaria, and carried Israel away into Assyria and placed them in Halah and in Habor by the river of Gozan and in the cities of the Medes. Right? So place them in modern day Iran. And I believe it's just Iran. If I could look and see where these rivers are. As far as, let's look at the map. Let's look at the map of Assyria real quick. Map of Assyria. Where are we at? Here we go. Does it show the Tigris? Because that's where the river goes in and comes off the Tigris. Yeah, so this would be like modern day Iraq, Iran. That'd be the city of the Medes, would be in Iran. So I was just trying to get specifically as far as by the river of Gozan and the cities of the Medes. So place them in Iraq and Iran. All right. So we're not going to get into necessarily the Israelites who were/are, because there's going to be a remnant in Iran, but keep that in mind for next week. I'll try to get into it. Them people, because most of them went east. As it says, for so it was that the children of Israel had sinned against the Lord their God, which had brought them up out of the land of Egypt from under the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and had feared other gods, right? It said, and walked in the statutes of the heathen, whom the Lord cast out from before the children of Israel, right? So they walked like the Canaanites. They become like the Canaanites. They become like the Phoenicians, and of the kings of Israel, which they had made, all right? So, I want to jump down as far as where are they at? Here we go, verse 15. It says, and they rejected his statutes and his covenant that he made with their fathers, and his testimonies which he testified against them. And they followed vanity and became vain, and went after the heathen that were round about them. Right? So not only went after them mentally and took on their culture, but also went after them physically and laid with them, right? Intermixed with them. Like they did with the Phoenicians, as we read with Ahab. All right? Concerning whom the Lord had charged them that they should not do like them. All right? So that's what the angel is making reference to when he's talking to Ezra here. All right? Those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hosea the king. All right? So those 10 tribes would be Ephraim, Manasseh, Simeon, Gad, Reuben, Issachar, Zebulun, Asher, Naphtali. That would be the 9 tribes that are usually represented on charts, and even in the book of Revelation 7 is where the names on the chart come from, but also Dan, right? Dan is not necessarily mentioned on charts and things like that. Not mentioned in Revelation 7, Dan isn't. But those are the 10 tribes, which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hosea the king, right? Represented by Joseph. As we read in Ezekiel 37, Joseph and his companions, whom Shalmaneser the king of Assyria led away captive, and he carried them over the waters, and so came they into another land, right? As we just read, Iraq and Iran. But they took this counsel among themselves that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt. All right. So they said, hey, let's get out of here. We have heard tales and heard stories of a place where never mankind dwelt. These stories being passed down from, the Israelite Phoenicians. I was trying to think of a better term for them. The Israelite Phoenicians during the time of Solomon, right? Because remember, they had control of all the Mediterranean and the Indian Ocean, because that's where the Red Sea leads out to, the Indian Ocean. That they might there keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land. And they entered into Euphrates by the narrow places of the river, right? So they entered into the Euphrates, got dumped out there in the Persian Gulf, and sailed around Africa, as we're reading in the in this Time Life books, Feats and Wisdom of the Ancients. All right, for the Most High then showed signs for them and held still the flood till they were passed over. For through that country there was a great way to go, namely of a year and a half. Right, it took them a year and a half to get over here. And the same region is called Arsareth. All right, so just to show you, I'm not making this up as far as this idea, this theory. Oh, that's a crackpot theory. No one ever would no one would ever subscribe to that. Here in the, I believe it's the online Jewish encyclopedia. So again, not a Hebrew Israelite source. This is from Jewish people, the Jewish encyclopedia. All right. It says the unedited full text of the I can't read that. That's too blurry. 1905, 1908 Jewish encyclopedia. It says Arzareth, as we just read it here, Arzareth, the same as Arzareth. The name of the land beyond the great river, far away from the habitations of man. Right? Because you think about it at that time, which would have been around 500 BC when they got freed, right? They wouldn't have got freed from that captivity in Assyria until Cyrus came and freed the Hebrews, right? In Ezra 1, you read about that. Far away from the habitations of man, in which the 10 tribes of Israel will dwell, observing the laws of Moses until the time of restoration, according to 4th Esdras 13-45, and that's what we're reading right now. And the Bible is called 2nd Esdras, but it's referred to as 4th Esdras by the Jewish Encyclopedia, because 1st Ezra would be Ezra, and then Nehemiah would be 2nd Ezra, whereas in the Bible it's Ezra, Nehemiah, 1st Esdras, and 2nd Esdras. All right. Columbus identified America with this land. So this idea that Columbus was looking for India and he just didn't know how to get to India, that's ridiculous. All right. Everyone knew that the way you get to India at that time was either you travel the spice routes or you sail around Africa. Everybody knew that. All right. A lot of people knew that there was a land over here as well, especially if you were like Columbus and you read and you read Ezra. All right. I may get into more into that next week, because there's a lot of this to cover, and I'm not even getting into individual tribes this week. I'll try to do that next week. All right. It says, see Kayserling's Christopher Columbus, right? And that's a book written by, I believe it was a Jewish woman who wrote Kayserling's Christopher Columbus. And she recites like his journals and his logs and things like that. So that's this place over here is Arzareth. All right. That's what the Hebrews called it. All right. And that's the original inhabitants of this land over here. And that's what we're reading in, here we go. What we haven't got to the part where it's called the Pariah Stone, but that's this journey that they're talking about. Now, whether they just believe themselves to be Phoenicians or whether it's a mistranslation, which I personally think is a mistranslation as far as like saying we are from Canaan, from Zidon. I think it's a little bit more accurate. But it could be that they were just confused. But according to the prophecy, that's the 10 tribes who came over here. That's not the Canaanites. All right. If it was indeed left by a Phoenician sailor, and again, we read about the Hebrew-Phoenician connection, the text memorializes an ancient visit to the New World long suspected by some scholars, because scholars know this. They know this information. They won't tell you. They won't give you this information. Oftentimes, they won't publish this information, but sometimes they do, because they want to keep it in academic circles. Right? If not, the Pariah inscription, as it is called, is among history's more intriguing hoaxes, right? So there's a question here. Is it a hoax or is it legit? And we're about to read on down and see if it's legit or not. In 1872, Ladislao Neto, the director of Brazil's National Museum of Rio de Janeiro, received from a colleague a copy of a letter. Its author, who was never found, described a stone tablet unearthed by workers on a plantation in Paraíba, now called João Pessoa, at Brazil's easternmost tip. Understand that thing. It's the easternmost part of Brazil, which the easternmost part of Brazil is closer to West Africa than the Mediterranean is wide. All right. Let's see. Putting aside his initial doubts about the inscription, published the text in 1874 after unsuccessfully seeking the original tablet and the letter writer. The inscription was promptly branded a fraud by experts in Phoenician languages, and a long simmering public debate ensued, right? So initially they said, look, this can't be real. Finally, Nato himself, after 10 years of professional and personal agony, recanted his belief in the text's authenticity. So he said, I give up. This must be a forgery. It must be fake, right? The guy who found it. Until the late 1960s, the case seemed settled and was virtually forgotten. Then Cyrus Gordon, an American scholar of Semitic languages, studied the text and declared it authentic. Ironically, for some of the same reasons that it was adjudged fraudulent nearly a century before. All right, so this Cyrus Gordon guy, he comes along because he's a scholar of Semitic languages. All right, so he said, hey, look, no, this is legit. So-called inaccuracies of vocabulary and grammar cited by critics in 1874 had become, by 1968, mere idiosyncrasies of dialect, right? Because if a real person writes something, yeah, they're going to spell something wrong. I mean, it is what it is. They're going to spell something wrong. They're going to write. I know that my writing looks like chicken scratch sometimes. You know what I mean? Sometimes my V's look like R's and vice versa. It's all just based on the person who's writing it. All right. Let's see. Similarities between the inscription and ancient Hebrew, once considered evidence of deceit, had since been documented as normal among the Phoenicians. You see that right there? So the similarities between the Phoenician writings and Hebrew writings, over time, people who studied these languages realized, oh, it's pretty much the same thing. All right? People who mixed readily with a number of other cultures. All right? As we just read, the Northern Kingdom was one to do. All right. Reading on down, because it's not too much longer, a couple paragraphs here. Moreover, Gordon's analysis seemed to reveal no fewer than 3 cryptograms buried in the tale. One, typical of ancient scripts, includes numbers that, when added, confirm the date given by the writer. The other codes, according to Gordon, tell the story, once again, from the point of view of both a Canaanite pagan and a Jewish crewman. You see that right there? So what they're determined as Canaanite are people who are pagans on board. All right? It's not even necessarily about they were like different races of people. They were pretty much the same people. It's just that some held to the faith more than others. The people that were aboard these ships. All right, he claimed were evidence of authenticity, since few counterfeiters were likely to have taken such pains with their work. You see that right there? So Cyrus Gordon said, look, this is actually a lot of work to go through for it to be fake. First of all, how would the person know these things, if it was fake? Like he said, look, I'm somebody who studied these languages, and it seems authentic to me. This seems like this is very consistent with what Phoenicians and Hebrews write. All right. To be sure, Gordon's detailed interpretation has not settled the controversy over the Paraiba inscription, and the debate is likely to continue until, if ever, the original stone inscription can be found and judged. All right. So, from there, let's get into this other book, and then we'll close it out. So, this book I want to touch on. It's called They Came Before Columbus, The African Presence in Ancient America. And Ivan Van Sertima is a British black man who obviously he's trying to make the case that the Africans were present in ancient America, right? But as I'm going to show and demonstrate, him being a secular guy, it really just proves that the Israelites were here. All right. So from there, which I don't necessarily want to get into all this. I sent myself all of them, took pictures of all of them just in case, but I'm gonna skip around a lot. It's gonna be even harder with the way that I had to throw these up here. So that's the last page. Let's go to the first page here. This is gonna be it. This chapter is the chapter. Yes. So this is chapter 9, I guess. African Egyptian presences in ancient America. And this basically just goes into the discovery of the Olmec heads, and that's what I'm really going to get into is the Olmec situation. All right. So yeah, we don't necessarily need this page. He's just saying the heads look somewhat Negroid and how they were found. Negroid is the word that he uses just to say black looking. This was written in the 80s, so, it's not going to use the same words that we use today. So, yeah, I'm not even going to need page 146 here, just talking about La Venta. Remember that La Venta is where they were originally founded. And then I do want to read this here. It says the year 291 BC. All right, that date, and he goes on to say, it was the earliest date then known for any American cultural find. So that was the original idea as far as like culture in the Americas didn't really start developing into what we know them as until around 291 BC, at least in Mesoamerica, which is like Mexican type area, Mexico and Central America. So this next page, I do want to get here because it talks about carbon dating. All right. So it says 4 Negroid heads and all were excavated at La Venta. So keep that in mind as far as La Venta is concerned. But it says, jumping down to this last paragraph here, it says, at the place where the Negroid figures in association with the Caucasoid figure with the beard were found. So I'll read the... We'll get more into that, the Negroid figure with the Caucasoid figure, and he goes on to say Mongoloid figure as well. We'll get into that. I believe it's on the next page. It said, the La Venta ceremonial court, 9 samples of wood charcoal were taken. 5 of these samples related to the original construction of the court. They gave an average reading of 814 BC plus or minus 134 years. See, this is why I don't trust radiocarbon dating, because that's a big difference between, it said plus or minus 134 years. So there's a range there of almost 270 years, right? How can you say that's accurate? All right. In other words, the living human figures upon which these heads were modeled could not have appeared at La Venta later than 680 BC and could have centered the Gulf of Mexico anytime between the average 800 BC date and the 680 BC date, a period which roughly spans the 25th dynasty in Egypt, right? So he's trying to make the case that, it was Egypt, or rather it was the Egyptians and Nubians who came over here. But we're going to demonstrate, I'm going to show, I should say we, because I'm using a collection of sources. We're going to show that it's not, that's not the case, all right? Carbon datings cannot be contested, right? With this guy being, he's actually a professor at Rutgers, or he was until he died, was a professor at Rutgers, right? So he's not going to contest carbon datings. But listen to what he says, though. Carbon datings cannot be contested, but they must allow for a margin of error about a century either way from the date assessed from samples of organic material. So, and on one hand he says they can be contested, but you also say, well, they can be a little wrong. So which one is it? Again, that's why I don't trust carbon datings. Carbon datings can be useful if you have other things to line it up with, right? If you also have writings to compare it with, if you also have other archaeological evidence, you can combine all these different manners of trying to figure out a date, but just carbon dating itself will not give you an accurate answer, all right? There must be a margin of error looking at. So that's why when scientists, geologists, archaeologists, whatever the case may be, paleontologists, find things that there's no writing by, there's no pottery by, they say, well, this happened millions and billions and trillions of years, because with carbon dating, it's not reliable. It'll tell you, it'll give you numbers that are just way off, all right? So, Let's keep going. Um, let's take 148. I don't necessarily want that. Here we go. So this is talking about the Olmecs. So let's. Why did I jump off of it? Don't jump off of it. That's not the Olmec. This is what I was just looking at. All right. So he said the Olmecs were a people of three faces. That is, a people formed from three main sources or influences. One of these faces was Mongoloid, right? So he like Asian. When he's saying Mongoloid, he means like Asian, or like of Mongolia. Elements of this Mongoloid strain may have come into America from Asia, even from the famous glacial migrations across the Bering Straits. And perhaps we'll get into that next week as well, as far as debunking that Bering Strait nonsense. Because first of all, if you believe in the Bible, you can't believe in an ice age, because there's no ice age in the Bible. So there'd be no Bering Strait ever. But they would have blended indistinguishably with the Ice Age Americans. The second phase or influence was Negroid, right? I've already talked about that. The third suggests a trace of Mediterranean Caucasoids, some with Semitic noses, probably Phoenician, but this will be shown to be related historically to the second. These faces became one face, to which the broad name Olmec was given. All right, so he's saying there was three different types of people to make this one people that came together. But let me just show these Olmecs, all right? Did I put that in a, no, I don't believe I did put it in a folder. I believe they're all sitting out here in my random files. Let's show these Olmecs, all right? Because first of all, here's the Olmec heads. Because he's talking about, well, some of them are Negro looking, some of them are Caucasian looking, some of them are Asian looking. Well, let's look at these Olmec heads. When you see these Olmec heads, yeah, some noses are different. Some faces are flatter than others. Some lips are thinner than others. But really, they all look just about the same. They found 17 of these Olmec heads, by the way. And this is all 17 of them. And of course, some have decayed more than others, like the rock has decayed more than others. But they all pretty much look the same. All right? Like I said, some noses are more prominent than others. Some lips are thinner than others. Some are thicker. Some noses are wider than others. Some faces are flatter than others. But they all pretty much look the same. And he said Mongoloid because some of the eyes look a little bit more Asian as far as with epicanthic folds or whatever. But most of these pretty much look the same. They all got the same type of helmet on with a little bit of variation, a little bit of personality to each one, a little bit of distinguishing features to each one. But they all pretty much look the same. All right? They're not like three different types of people. It's just all one people with different features. All right? And here's the, I'll go through a few modern comparisons with the Olmecs. So y'all forgive me. I was trying to find good examples of these comparisons, but a lot of the images were blurry. But as you can see, people have already done the work for me as far as like people in Mexico where these Olmec heads were found were getting pissed off that everybody's trying to say, well, it's these people, it's these people, it's these people. The people in Mexico said, or some people in Mexico, this isn't everybody, but obviously, but they said, look, this is us. This is what we look like. And so they have all these comparisons here. And I'll try to zoom in just a little more so you can see. But literally for each type of feature that you see on these Olmec artifacts, especially the heads, they have gathered images of different Mexican people to show you like this is the same people. This is the progenitors of Mexicans and Central Americans. All right. Let's go to this comparison number 2. And we'll read about the Olmecs here shortly. And yeah, this one's going to be real blurry. Y'all forgive me. But you see here how these Olmecs were just the progenitors of the Maya, and the Teotihuacan culture, which is Aztec culture later. Um, so, and again, with these dates, they got them through carbon dating and things like that. I don't necessarily subscribe to these dates. Whether whether the Olmec culture was from the maritime traders of Solomon coming over here, which I don't necessarily think, because in Second Ezra it said where never mankind dwelt. So it seems to me, and this is just a theory. Obviously, I haven't went around digging and seeing the excavation sites and whatnot, but that the first people who touched down over here were those who left the Paraiba Stone, and then from there, you have people migrate northward. That's what it seems to me, at least. So this is from Britannica, Mesoamerican Civilization. I'm gonna jump down to the part where it says corn cultivation in one area, the humid and fertile lowlands of southern Veracruz and Tabasco in Mexico, was sufficiently productive to permit a major diversion of human energy into other activities, such as the arts and commerce. Struggles for control of this rich but limited farmland resulted in a dominant landowning class that shaped the first great Mesoamerican civilization, the Olmec, right? So I just read all that so that we can understand that was the first great civilization that was in, the Mexican Central American area, all right? San Lorenzo, the oldest known Olmec center, dates to about 1150 BC, which again, like I said, I don't know about them dates. A time when the rest of Mesoamerica was at best on a Neolithic level, right? So the Olmecs were really the main culture at the time, the main civilization of the time. The site is most noted for its extraordinary stone monuments, especially the colossal heads measuring up to 9 feet, nearly 3 meters in height, and possibly representing players in a ritual ball game. No. More than likely it was not. It seems like those were more like chiefs and warriors. But again, that's my opinion. The period known as the Middle Formative Period from 900 to 300 BC, and that's pretty much what this book, They Came Before Columbus, pretty much represents that time period. That's pretty much where they got that time period from. Was the same type of research that Ivan von Sertima looked into, during which the La Venta urban complex rose and flourished, was one of increased cultural regionalism. All right, so again, the La Venta is where they found that area. The Zapotec people, for example, attained a high level of development at Monte Alban, producing the first writing and written calendar in Mesoamerica. However, at this site, as well as the Valley of Mexico, the Olmec presence can be widely detected. All right, so I just want to keep reading just so we can see from the Olmecs developed who and what. In the subsequent late formative and classic periods lasting until about 700 to 900 CE. So you see that's a big skip there, all right? From 300 BC, which is probably a more accurate date concerning this Olmec civilization, to about 700 to 900 CE. The well-known Maya, Zapotec, Totonac, and Teotihuacan civilizations developed distinctive variations on their shared Olmec heritage. You see that right there? So all the people groups from the Maya to the Teotihuacan civilization, as you read down here, Teotihuacan power diminished after about 600, and for the next several centuries, numerous states vied for supremacy. The Toltecs of Tula in central Mexico prevailed from about 900 to 1200. And then that's where the Aztec came from, was the Toltecs. All right, so the Teotihuacan civilization brought forth, what we know of as far as the Toltecs, and the Aztec later came after. And the Toltecs, if I talked about it before, not on Learning the Word, but on Friday Night Lesson, we're talking about Mexico. Toltecs came from, and let's just read this in the Chronicles real quick. First Chronicles, I think it's 7? Maybe I'm mistaken. I think it's 7. It talks about Toltecs. Or talks about Tola, rather. Yeah, First Chronicles 7 and verse 1. It says, now the sons of Issachar were Tola. All right? And Pua, Jashub, and Shimron, 4. Right, and then it goes on to list the sons of Tola. That's where Toltec comes from. He says the city of Tulan, more than likely named after Tola, as far as the Israelites would do that all the time. Name the city after the person who is the forefather of that particular city. Like Bethlehem Ephrata was named after the man Ephrata of the lineage of Judah. But the Olmecs, the reason why I wanted to go here to Britannica, just to talk about how the Olmecs were the forefathers of all the Mexican and Central American civilizations, basically. And as I've shown, like I'll show this other one as well because I got it here. It's the forefathers of the people that's still there. It's not like it was some other people that like it's these people, the indigenous of that land. All right. Yeah, you see the Tolmec. The Olmec head there is the same as the indigenous people. All right, the features are the same. It's just that the headwear is a little different. And actually, the headwear actually looks like the base of a like feathered crown that you would make. I got a demonstration over there on the wall, but that's the base of all like feathered crowns and the exceptional crowns that you would see among the indigenous over here in the Americas. It is like the leather helmet that you see there. So it said these were a people of three faces, right? The Mongoloid, the Negroid, and the Caucasoid. It said the Mediterranean Caucasoid. And as it says, some with Semitic noses. Semitic, like as we had read in Dr. Windsor's book, the Phoenicians were Canaanites, all right? They're not Semitic. They're Hamitic. So the Semitic noses, that means that they're not Phoenician ethnically. They would be Israelites, all right? Because that was the people who were Semitic in that region, all right? It says, but this will be shown to be related historically to the second. These faces become one face to which broad name Olmec was given. I think it's necessary to make it clear, since partisan and ethnocentric scholarship seems to be the order of the day, that the emergence of the Negroid face, which the archaeological and cultural data overwhelmingly confirms, in no way presupposes of the lack of native originality. You see that right there? So he is even telling you, like, look, it's the natives. That's who it is. But of course, he's got to make his bias with his case that, like, hey, it was actually black people who visited over here. Not realizing that, oh, it was just one people group that came over here with all these different features. And when he says Mediterranean Caucasoids, he's not talking about like what we think of Caucasian today. That's not what he's talking about. Because like, let me show you this one. This is the Phoenician. Like, this is an ancient depiction of Phoenicians. All right. This was found in Tutankhamun's tomb. All right. This is from a book I have called Discovery of Ancient America by David Allen Deal. So this is from Tutankhamun's tomb. As you see here, you got this described here. A cane with a carved figure of a Phoenician / Canaanite, the northern enemy, as opposed to the southern enemy shown on the other end of the handle, a precise rendering of an Ethiopian, right? So I'm not familiar with the Egyptian custom as far as like putting the enemies on the cane. Perhaps it represents, they are under me, they are under my hand. That's why they're in the cane or whatever. But regardless, as you can see, there's the Nubian on one side, the Ethiopian Cushite on one side, and on the other side, you have a Hamite Canaanite, which is just a light-skinned black person, right, with even like a little bit of Asian eyes, right? And I got better images of that in the photos here. And let's see, because that was from that book, but these I actually pulled off Google just to show you. And I couldn't find one of the Nubian, of the Ethiopian with both on it that's just zoomed up. That's just another example one of the canes found in there. But on the other side, you have this Phoenician man, right? This Canaanite man. Let me zoom in a little. Right, so he's just a light-skinned, like more yellow, black guy, and you see that like in the Egyptians as well, like that kind of variation. I don't necessarily have it here, but here's a color photo of the cane. But that's the variation that you would see among the Canaanites from light to dark. You'd see that also with the Egyptians. Like if you look at the Egyptian reliefs, they're from light to dark. Same as you see among the Northern Kingdom Israelites today, among so-called black people as well. Israelites are scattered all over the world from light to dark. When he's talking about Mediterranean Caucasoid, he ain't talking about Edomite right here. He ain't talking about Herod. He's talking about like the Phoenician, right? Light skin, more light skinned Hamite looks. So from there, I think I just got one more page. Oh, don't tell me I didn't get a page of that. Or yeah, because 151, that was the first one I clicked on. So apart from the 4 found there, 2 were excavated in Tres Zapotes and 5 at San Lorenzo and Veracruz, one of which the largest known is 9 feet 4 inches high, and that's what we had read. And going on down, because I'm already like way over time, but I'm gonna jump on down. It says over 140 of these figures, most of them Negroid types and Negroid Mongolian mixtures, right? So that was the people, as we see among the indigenous today, are like kind of a mix, kind of look like a mix between Asian and black people, right? And brown people. That's the Mediterranean Caucasoid. He's talking about like brown people, like Middle Eastern people. So as the Northern Kingdom was one to do, they killed all the kings that were before them. That's what that goes in to say. So where's 151? Page 151 is this gonna be it right here? Maybe I skipped over something important at the bottom of the page. Okay, so it said this influence, as marked by the distribution of the Negroid colossi, radiated outward from the Levanta into Tres Zapotes and San Lorenzo in Veracruz. In the southeastern corner of Veracruz, the state where the largest of the Negroid colossi were found, archaeologists have turned up an Egyptian bas-relief carving of a Semite on the back of a Teutonic slate mirror. In Monte Alban itself, where the Negroid dancers or death figures were engraved, carvings closely resembling an Egyptian sphinx and the Egyptian god Ra and its bird aspect appear at the same location, right? So remember what Hoshea did. They always turned to Egypt, all right? The Israelites always turned to Egypt, all right? Even more example of Israelite customs that are found over here in the Americas, all right? Of course, he's trying to make the case of, Egypt went all the way over there. But even the time that he presents, it was like, well, Assyria was coming through the region, and I think he said Tarharkin was actually fighting against the Assyrians. So like, why and how would they have the time or the resources to fight the Assyrians and come all the way over here? Like, it just doesn't make any sense as far as the theory that he's making. But it would make sense if the people who came over here also worshipped Egyptian gods. That would also make sense as to why you see reliefs that appear to be depicting Egyptian gods over here. Also, the temple, and maybe at Teotihuacan, I may be mistaken, the pyramid that is in the Yucatan, it has the biggest pyramid down there. It has the exact same dimensions as the Pyramid of Giza. I didn't necessarily look into that, but as far as like bringing that up. But it's just another example of the people that are over here were in Egypt at one point. All right, and that's the Israelites. Obviously, we came out of Egypt with a mighty hand. The Lord delivered us with a mighty hand out of Egypt. But the people in mind and in spirit always went back to Egypt. All right, as it says here in Isaiah 30. Woe to the rebellious children, saith the Lord, that take counsel but not of me, and that cover with a covering but not of my spirit, that they may add sin to sin. And that's what happened with the northern kingdom. As we read, they went after the heathen, right? That walked to go down into Egypt, and have not asked at my mouth, to strengthen themselves in the strength of Pharaoh, and to trust in the shadow of Egypt. That's what Hoshea, the king of Israel, did. He trusted in So, king of Egypt, as if he was going to save him from the hand of the Lord, who, the Lord had brought Shalmaneser against him. All right. Therefore shall the strength of Pharaoh be your shame, and the trust in the shadow of Egypt your confusion. You see that right there. So, that's what happened to the northern kingdom. And some of them, as we read with the Pariah stone, some of them were pagan that came over here, unfortunately. But the people who led the people to the ends of the earth were doing it either knowingly or unknowingly to fulfill prophecy. And a lot did have in mind to keep the commandments. And we're going to get into that next week. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and close it out. We'll get more into the Gadites next week. I'll try to even get the book that talks more about Columbus's fascination with that prophecy in Ezra, and talks a little bit about the Reubenites as well. But with that, hope y'all learned something. I'm going to go ahead and close it out with Mark 14. I'm going to get up early tomorrow. Mark 14. I'm going to give memorial to that sister, as the Lord told us to do. And this may even be a three-parter. At this point, talking about Joseph and all the resources and prophecy concerning the 12 tribes, this may end up being a three-parter. Because I didn't even really, like I said, I didn't even really touch on the Israelites in the East. But it's coming. It's coming. Mark 14, and starting with 3. And being in Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, as he said at meat, there came a woman having an alabaster box of ointment of spikenard very precious, and she brake the box and poured it on his head. And there were some that had indignation within themselves, and said, Why was this waste of the ointment made? For it might have been sold for more than 300 pence, and have been given to the poor. And they murmured against her. And Jesus said, Let her alone. Why trouble ye her? She hath wrought a good work on me. For you have the poor with you always, and whensoever ye will, you may do them good. But me ye have not always. She hath done what she could. She has come aforehand to anoint my body to the burying. Verily I say unto you, wheresoever this gospel shall be preached throughout the whole world, this also that she hath done shall be spoken of for a memorial of her. So with that, all praise to the Most High for that sister, and all praises to the Most High for another week where we can serve Him in learning the Word. So I say shalom. And let God be magnified.